Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaRakah Kadash, double honors unto the apostles and elders, great millstone who rule well, and shalom to the hopeful elect. This video, I want to delve into a statement that's came out dealing with Boris Johnson. Okay, and before I get into the article, basically, we have to understand that Boris Johnson is like a mirror image of Donald Trump in the UK, which is befitting as the times that we're in. It makes sense for this present time as the Lord is basically bringing forth his judgment. He's setting his pieces, the right pieces in place so that everything can be orchestrated correctly, okay? Now, as you know, with Donald Trump, he says a lot of inflammatory statements which brings out the worst in people, okay? Particularly dealing with so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Boris Johnson, on the other side of the pond, does the same thing. Now, we know the first thing he done that I can mention is the fact that he has sent two hordes of so-called Negroes to the West Indies, being the tribe of Benjamin, okay? Back to the West Indies, who came over here in the 1950s on a Windrush, all right? Even though they got open cases presently running, all right? And now he said these statements, okay? Well, he's not saying that he did say them, but he's not saying he didn't. So the fact that, I'm taking it, the fact that he didn't deny them, he said them, okay? And so basically, you know, this guy is really, you know, making prophecy come to pass, as it tells you of race wars basically with the people, okay? So I'm gonna get into it. This is the Independent. It reads, Downing Street refuses to say if Boris Johnson agrees with advisor who suggested black people are mentally inferior and back compulsory contraception. All right, so compulsory contraception, which I believe is like sterilizing, is a form of eugenics. All right, let me just confirm this. Yeah, compulsory sterilization, forced coerced sterilization. Yeah, so basically not allow them to reproduce. And we know that that's something akin to the founder of Planned Parenthood, which is Margaret Sanger, which basically said statements like this: we want to exterminate the Negro population. Well, she said it better actually says, reads like this: we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the Negro population, she was dealing with America, but basically that's the tribe of Judah, okay? So, and she made inflammatory statement. I'm gonna keep saying this word, inflammatory. She also said, that's the word of the day, I'm guessing. She also Planned Parenthood spoke out against the Native Americans, the so-called Puerto Ricans, so-called Native Americans. Listen, so anyway, delving into the point. So now this is from the article. Downing Street has refused to say whether Boris Johnson agrees with an advisor who suggested black people were mentally inferior and advocated compulsory contraception to prevent a permanent underclass. So now, if someone's mentally, the first point I gotta say, it says, and advocate compulsory contraception to prevent a permanent underclass. All right, so you're basically saying that, you know, by doing so, it'll stop. By the culling of so-called black people, will do away with a permanent underclass. All right. So many things running through your mind with a statement like this, but let me just throw out a couple points. Now, the first point is you gotta really deal with, when we're dealing with so-called black people, all right, who are Judah, Benjamin, Levi, the Mosai's chosen people, the Israelites, okay, three of 12 tribes of Israel. Where have they been for the past 400 odd years? They've been in slavery to the beckoning call of Boris and Johnson's people. So their education and their cultivation, their culture, so to speak, has been under the steady guidance and steady hand of their slave master. So really, they're byproducts, by and large, of slavery. All right. So if you're saying these people are permanent underclass, I'm guessing that there was this is a byproduct of your system, how it was prior. Because if you know anything about history, you know it wasn't always like that. You know that there was a time called the Dark Ages, which in fact was the rulership of the so-called Negroes over the whole of Europe. Okay. Yes, people talk about the Moors dealing with Grenada, Spain, having rulership over there, North Africa, but also the knighthood was actually, if you check out the etymology of the word knight, it actually goes back to the word night, as in day and night, being that it's the darkness of the night, because the nights were dark, okay, they were dark skinned. And that's why you have all over Europe, you have different monuments that go back to the Dark Ages, where they show saints like Saint Maurice in Switzerland, a dark skinned man. Alright. Even Othello, Shakespeare's play, and in fact also Shakespeare was a dark skinned man as well. So there's various parts of history when you delve into it, the royal family of the royal family in the UK, alright, even the actual governing of the United Kingdom was done under so-called Negroes, being the Plantagenets, which were, or also known as the the Jacobites or something to that effect. And why would they be called that? Because they're so-called Negroes. And when you open up, the name Jacob goes back to Jacob and Esau, okay? The descendants, the twins of, one of the twins of Isaac and Rebecca. But I'm kind of straying from a point. But the point is that prior to the time of slavery, there was something called quote unquote black excellence. The Moors, you just look into all these various different things. You had Mansa Musa, the kingdom of Timbuktu. You had all these different kingdoms that Israel established after they were put to an end, going back to 70 AD in Jerusalem, when the Romans came down and scattered them into the four winds of the earth, and they established various kingdoms upon the earth, okay? But I digress and I move on. A number 10 spokesman was repeatedly asked at a Westminster media briefing whether the PM wished to distance himself from a string of controversial remarks made by Andrew Sabisky, who was recruited by senior advisor Dominic Cummins, presented with a series of Sabisky's comments and asked whether the PM backed them or would condemn them. The spokesman responded only, "The Prime Minister's views are well publicised and well documented." Alright. Despite frequent requests, despite frequent requests, the Downing Street spokesman was unable to point a single example of the Prime Minister expressing a view of eugenics or intelligence of black people, merely saying that reporters would find that his opinions were well documented on public record. He declined to say whether Mr. Johnson's views on the issue reflected in the magazine, article in which the PM referred to black people as pickaninnies with watermelon smiles, and that is something he did say before, some racist shit, some real old school imperialism kind of racist shit. Mr. Sabisky resigned later on Monday, citing the media attention on his views. Whilst editor of The Spectre, Mr. Johnson published an article in which columnist Taki wrote, "On average, Orientals are slower to mature, less randy, less fertile, and have larger brains and higher IQ scores. Blacks are at the other pole, and whites fall somewhere in the middle, although closer to the Orientals than the blacks." I guess you do, man, because I don't think you know about the blacks, as you like to call them. was gonna put this on layaway before I forget. Let me get back. So it's luckier. In my thoughts. Anyway, asked subsequently about his contribution. This is funny, man. Anyway, this is some funny shit. Asked subsequently about his contributors' remarks, Mr. Johnson described Taki as a very distinguished columnist. Wow. The PM is coming under growing pressure to sack Mr. Sabisky over comments prior to the appointment, which he called for the young to undergo compulsory contraception to prevent the creation of a permanent underclass, disparagingly compared to women's sport to Paralympics, and suggested black people were more likely than whites to be close to mental retardation. The 27-year-old self-styled super forecaster responded to Mr. Cummins' call for the misfits and weirdos to apply for the work on 10 Downing Street, but his extreme views immediately sparked outrage online after it emerged that he had made comments about the IQs of black people on a blog post published in 2014. In it, he wrote, if the mean black American IQ is best estimate based on a century's worth of data around 85 as compared to mean American IQ of 100, then if IQ is normally distributed, you will see a far greater percentage of blacks than whites in a range of IQ 75 or below, at which point we are close to the typical boundary of mild mental retardation that parsimoniously explains the greater diagnostic rates for blacks when it comes to intellectual disability. This is all interesting. Mr. Sabisky has also come under fire for previously stating that much of the hue and cry against female genital mutilation looks more like a moral panic. He also suggested that giving children mental performance enhancing drugs which might pose a risk to their lives was probably worth a dead kid once a year. In 2016, the Cambridge graduate argued, and it comes out of Cambridge, the case for eugenics, which aims to improve the genetic quality of the population by excluding certain groups judged inferior, writing eugenics are about selecting for good things. Yeah, because the word eugenics mean you meaning good and genetics meaning genes, good genes. The Downing Street spokesman had earlier refused to confirm his appointment or to say whether he was working as a special advisor to the PM paid by the taxpayer, and he appeared to back away from the attempt by the Cabinet Minister Grant Shapps to distance himself from Mr. Sabisky at the weekend when the Transport Secretary reported comments. Alright, let me deal with these little points before I forget my points. Okay, first off, African Americans in America, IQ. First off, the whites in America, what's their background? What's their culture? America's basically set up for so-called white people being Edomites to thrive. Right? There's something called white supremacy, where the chips are stacked in their favor. Whereas with African Americans being in the general neighborhoods that they live on, being ghettos, and having disparaging settings in their environments, they're gonna behave a certain way. Like when you pump drugs into their neighborhood, like when you put AIDS in their neighborhood, because that is a patented um, disease. But ultimately, all of those things that fall upon the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they're the curses that are written inside of the Bible. Because in Deuteronomy the 28th chapter and the 15th verse, it said when Israel didn't follow the word of the Heavenly Father, they'll basically fall short of His glory. I mean, they'll have curses put upon them. All right. So when they're saying this is more of this is not nothing. All right. Because again, he's gone to America. Why didn't he stick in the UK? All right. So this is this is the UK smartest family. Nigerian. So it reads: meet the Imafi Don family, UK's smartest family. All right. Nigerians. Okay. Which Nigerians are basically Israelites that are scattered in the west coast of Africa. Okay, I'm so-called Nigerian myself, of the Yoruba tribe, which the word Yoruba goes back to the lush one called Dash, Yahweh, and that's as plain as that. Judah, okay, Yahweh, thank you, Yahweh for water, Yahweh, okay, is Judah in English, alright? And that's the tribe that I belong to. But so-called that's a so-called part of the so-called Nigerians, which the word Nigeria goes back to the Latin basically meaning black, okay? Or blacks. Okay, Nigerians have always been known for their very active set to be a very active set of people who usually turn out to be achievers wherever they go to. And that's very true, because I'm sure if you go anywhere in Europe, in terms of the old world, you're going to find a Nigerian there. So in Kazakhstan, in bloody India, in China, in Greece, Antetokounmpo, Giannis Antetokounmpo, where is he from? Greece, him and his family, okay? Because why? They migrated there from Nigeria. All of these different Nigerians go anywhere and they thrive there because it's that spirit that's on them, the spirit of Judah, basically. All right. And I say that as a whole, even though there's a myriad of there could be other tribes amongst them, but it's only because Nigeria, in terms when it comes to so-called Africans that descend from Israel, they lead the flock basically. And that's a well-known, it's a well-known fact, okay? So anyway, they are hard workers who love to set trends and lead the pace. And this is where this is coming from. I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot, man. Ghana American Journal. But the Ghanaians know it, man. Because quote unquote Nigeria and Ghana have a friendly rivalry. But it's because Ghana's like the closest counterpart. That's that Judah and Benjamin, basically. Okay. Anyway, reading on, Nigerians are also considered to be very smart and brainy people who usually excel in academics in all countries around the world where they are found. This assertion is definitely no lie and has been exemplified by a Nigerian family in the UK. The Ifedon family. The Infidem family has come to be known as the smartest family in England. Yeah, you read that right. The family considered to be the smartest in the whole of England is from Nigeria, and that should make you pause for a while and smile, shouldn't it? So let's now go back to what this guy Andrew's saying, Andy, all right? So he's saying he's calling for sterilization of blacks, and he's using the IQ test for Americans in the UK. Yet this brother's from the US. He's using stats from Judah in America. Yet this guy is from the UK where the smartest family in the UK is a Nigerian family. Slap yourself, my guy, man. You got any sense? Anyway, um, so and then it goes on to speak about eugenics. Simply being put, in terms of physicality, Jake, and when I say Jake, I'm talking about Judah, Benjamin, Levi, so-called Negroes, excel physically, mentally, all right? But this is really what's been done is put a great stereotype's been put out, because here you come, if you're Jake and you have any kind of physicality, the last thing they're gonna think you have is a brain in your head. Okay, you have any form of sense. And why is that? Because the image of Jake that's been put upon the earth, pumped out through the media, Esau's basically witchcraft, is that, we're great sportsmen. We have great ability in sports and whatnot. We have no ability in terms of academics or any brain worth able to bring to the world. But yeah, if you go into black inventors, this world is basically running upon everything that was invented by the people known as the Israelites, okay, who are known today as so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, but mainly harping on the Negroes, right? For example, Jack Johnson, who fits that same image that I just spoke of, that basically is like a muscle-bound, meant to be a dumb ape Negro, all right, with no brain in his head, got locked up in prison, and guess what he did? He made the wrench, which they actually smartly titled the monkey wrench, all right? So we're talking about a boxer who also, in his spare time, was also a conductor in a band, but more importantly, an inventor that patented an invention known as a wrench, all right, which is used in every toolbox the world over. That was put there by who? A boxer known as Jack Johnson, all right? The first black heavyweight, first boxing heavyweight world champion to be so-called black, okay? He made the wrench, all right? Ain't he meant to just be knocking guys out and breathing all heavy and saliva all over his face? But he managed to invent something that's in every man's toolbox to this day, all right? The radio, black inventors, all right? The light bulb, black inventors. Traffic lights, black inventors. Refrigerator, black inventor. So all of these different things, a myriad of inventions that made the internet, black inventor. Computers, black inventors. When you delve into all of these things, you see a common thread of Jake, okay, so-called Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, okay, the Israelites being in the midst of those creations. But this guy's claiming that they should be sterilized and they should be cold off the earth, all right, for their weak genes. Well, even to get on this level, we have a thing called melanin, okay, which gives us the hue that distinguishes us from another race, right? Could be a dark hue or it could be a light hue, which amongst us we'll call people red bone or light skin, high yellow. Those are slang terms that we use amongst ourselves, but those are terms that hue that's put inside of us is the same as what's inside of a plant, okay, known as chlorophyll, which basically extracts vitamin D from the sun, all right? So that being rich with melanin would then make you more superior to someone that don't have it, okay? So this is all just witchcraft to basically, and people read this shit and really believe it, man, because this is the way Esau manipulates the minds of the people to believe this shit. And then when they stumble across a Jake, someone like myself or one of you brothers that are listening, they get bewildered at the fact that you have a brain in your head, okay? And normally that's down to the fact that the Lord has lifted us up, as it tells you in Revelation, the 11th chapter, and Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, about the valley of dry bones, and the covering came upon us, the flesh, and all of these things. and the breath of life only come into us to give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Okay, to basically what's the word in 2 Corinthians 10, it tells you that we're to cast down strongholds. Okay, strongholds over the minds of the people, that what they believe about the Most High's chosen people. Okay, anyway, let me read this last few paragraphs. Asked whether Mr. Shaps was speaking on behalf of the government, the No 10 spokesman replied, I didn't hear specifically what the Transport Secretary said. The Transport Secretary was speaking as a Transport Secretary, which is part of the government, all right? I've answered the question on behalf of the Prime Minister. So that lets you know, Jay, out there, if you're listening, so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, this man is not for you. This world is not for you. Okay, Micah 2:10 tells you, arise and depart, for this is not your rest. We'll put her in captivity. All right, you guys, you so-called West Indians, the tribe of Benjamin, you came over. You were the first so-called Negroes. Well, you had Judah that came over here during the time of World War One and Two, and various different periods. But dealing with the run rush, you so-called Negroes, you so-called West Indians came over here and settled and were promised all these great things. And guess what? Now you're getting kicked out and sent back to your islands, all right? So that should show you this ain't your rest. Anyway, Labour Party Chairman Ian Lavery said it is disgusting that not only has Number 10 failed to condemn Andrew Sabisky's appalling comments, but also seems to have endorsed the idea that white people are more intelligent than black people. And the actual fact is the other way round, okay? Is so-called black people are smarter than so-called white people. And the reason why is because the Most High bestowed his wisdom. This ain't of our own glory, or like we're so great and we just, nah. The Most High set up like that. Going back to the curse, this whole white people and black people thing goes back to the curse. Goes back to Jacob and Esau, okay? And it tells you in the book of Sirach, the Most High made everything in doubles. And it even goes on to say about good is set against evil, right? That's why everything in this world is about black and white. So that's why when the Most High set up Jacob and Esau, he said one people shall be stronger than the other. And basically that they were set at odds against each other. But the craziest shit that the Most High done is the fact that that was a long-standing thing, but in this day and age, the Most High threw a span in the works, which he tells you in Habakkuk, the 1st chapter and the 5th verse, that he will work a miracle in those days, being that he will mix Israelite seeds in the midst of Esau's seed, and he will mix Esau's seed in the midst of Israel's seed. So in turn, what's being said is that the spirit of a so-called white person will look like a black person, all right? But then you have the spirit of a black person like a white person. Key examples, or the best key examples I can go by being using Romans 8 and 16 as a guideline. The spirit itself bear witness with our spirit that we are the sons of the Most High. Someone, for example, like Eminem, that guy's rapping caliber is high grade, and that there ain't no thing that an ordinary Edomite can do. Whereas if you ask an ordinary any nigga on the street can write a 16 bar and spray some rap lyrics to you. That ain't nothing new. But what Eminem's doing in the midst of Edomites is crazy, okay? And that's that the Most High doing that, okay? Anyway, reading on, Boris Johnson should have the backbone to make a statement in his own words on why he has made this appointment, whether he stands by it or whether his own views on the subject of eugenics and his own views on the subject of eugenics. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said, these are really not acceptable headlines for a government to be generating or allowing to be generated. They need to get a grip fast and demonstrate some basic but fundamental values in terms of our public debate, right? So I'm just gonna hit a myriad of scriptures and that'll be the lesson, man. So this is First Samuel 2 and 3. Talk no more so exceedingly proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. All right. So listen, we ain't meant to be arrogant. Okay, talking about the children of Israel, you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. Even though man have gone through slavery and all these things, and the odds are stacked against you. You ain't then meant to turn out and live up to the mark of what the society is saying you to be. You're meant to overcome that. Okay, for the Lord is a power of knowledge, a God of knowledge, a power of knowledge, and by Him actions are weighed. So it tells you the Most High is a power of knowledge. All right, so that means the Most High is about you having a brain in your bloody head and being able to read. That's why it tells you in Revelations, the first chapter, blessed is he that readeth. All right, you're meant to be up on certain things. The first thing you're meant to be up on is the prophecies of the Most High power. And then once you're up on them, it says watch as well as pray. So you're meant to be up on current events. Hence why I'm reading an article dealing with this. Okay, because these things are in alignment with the prophecies of the end times. All right, this is basically a sign. Okay, showing you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Americans, this ain't your rest, and the things to come in the future, that they basically want to sterilize you, kill you, and don't hold you in high esteem in the society. Okay, so there's going to be a day of reckoning for that. They're just putting out the vibration there. So that's that. All right. So this is Wisdom of Solomon 3:36. No, not 3:36. It's a rock. It's a rock. No. Bear with me one moment. Yes, Baruch 3:36. Let me read from verse 35. This is our power, and there shall none other be accounted of in comparison of him. Right? Our power being Yahweh, the Most High Power, the God in heaven. And in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, it describes him as a dark-skinned man with a woolly afro. So what I'm in fact saying is God is black. Okay, He have found out all the way of knowledge, and He have given it unto His servant Jacob, and to Israel His beloved. So the Most High is a God of knowledge, right? And He basically found out all the ways of knowledge and bestowed it upon who? The children of Israel. Okay, and that's why this scripture comes into effect. Jeremiah 51:19. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is a full, not like who? Any of these other nations upon the earth, the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, they're not like any other nation on this earth. That's why they are the trendsetters, the forward thinkers in this world. Everything that is cutting edge or defines society, basically you'll find the hand of a so-called Negro, Hispanic, or Native American, or a descendant who may not look like an Israelite in terms of Negroes, so-called Hispanic, so-called Native American, but their spirit is what of that descent. For example, Idris Sandu. We're dealing with a modern era now, moving away from the black inventors that established many of the key staples within this society. Idris Sandu, in terms of social media and all of the new cutting edge technology dealing with Google, Instagram, okay, Facebook, Snapchat, all of these different sites, Spotify, all the various different sites. He's the brainchild behind most of their inventions, all right? And guess where he's from? Ghana, okay? He's a Jake from Ghana, all right? And he's up there in Silicon Valley doing all kind of work for them, all right? So this is Jeremiah 51:19. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the form of all things, all right? He is the form of all things. But guess what? Let me read on. And Israel is the rod of his inheritance, the Most High's inheritance, the God of knowledge, who that found out all the ways of knowledge and gave it unto Israel, because Israel the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms. And that's ultimately what's gonna happen. Because why? That's he that toucheth the apple of the most high eye. Basically that's the judgment. Alright? So ooh. Leaves in my car. Okay, yeah, so I'm gonna end on this. Wisdom of Solomon 5:1. Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him. Right? Dealing with who? Esau. Alright? The spirit of the most high power. This is really quoted dealing with Revelations the 11th chapter, 7th chapter, when it speaks about their dead bodies rising up after 7 days and a half. And standing up in great boldness because of what? The wisdom, knowledge, and understanding being within them. Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors. Okay? And that's the main thing. They've made no account of our labor. This is not these things that they're saying is lies, okay? Big lies. Now, when you delve in deep into the history and all the facts within this society, what you find is Jake's hand in everything. Okay. So, with that, I pray.